Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Sean Blackburn with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by James Gill. He is the Group Account Director for Kingpin Communications. James, how are you doing today?
Great, Sean. Thanks for having me on the show.
Fantastic. Super happy to have you. And, today we're going to be talking about how modern business teams make purchasing decisions. But before we begin, if you could tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background and, what it is you guys at Kingpin Communications are up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 years as an agency man myself. A majority of that's been in the B2B space. I've been at Kingpin now for over 11 years. Our focus is really around helping technology businesses sell in the B2B space. And that's working with everyone from the likes of Microsoft down to new SaaS startups. The easiest way of describing what we do at Kingpin is everything apart from public relations. So all types of marketing tactics we love getting involved in. It's really about finding the right solutions for our clients' needs.
I love it. And you guys have been just getting accolades poured on you the past couple of years. So, mention a couple of those. Super proud of you guys for everything that you've been doing in the B2B space.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great couple of years of growth for us. A lot of accolades, whether it's B2B league tables, drum recommendations and awards. Here in the UK, we've won Agency of the Year 2 years on the bounce now. And that's testament to all the hard work that our teams put in, but also having a great set of clients and great set of partners to help deliver those campaigns.
I love it. And so today we're going to be talking about how modern business teams, and teams I think is the key word there, make purchasing decisions. Why do you think this is a valuable topic for us to unpack today?
I think we've seen a lot of research, both in the market, but also real life experience that's shown there's more and more people involved in that buying team today. There's more information available for people, and therefore more of them are now getting involved in the decision making or the influencing cycle. And I'm not always sure that sales and marketing processes have kept up with this modern world. So we're quite passionate about using data and insights to produce the right content and help people on that sales and marketing journey.
Absolutely. And when you say the team has kind of expanded, what are some of those roles that you think are getting involved now that maybe weren't involved in the past?
So it's interesting you say that. I was with an IT client about 2 weeks ago talking about this in detail. And the thing they've highlighted was that procurement are getting involved earlier in the purchase process. So especially in large enterprise organizations, they found that the procurement teams are getting involved sooner, but also they've actually been out there doing their own research. They're not just waiting for the internal team to come to them and say, okay, here's what we want to sign off, and then going through that. Do we need to negotiate? What's the value? Where are the discount points? What's the total lifetime cost of this? They're actually out there comparing solutions to other competition in the market. And that's caught out the internal buyers as well. So not just the tech company selling, but also the people internally that were hoping to push through a purchase are now being held back as well. And I think there's a real opportunity for the buyer and the seller to take the lead and work together and help influence that team, build the right content, tell the right stories, and make that a smooth journey for everyone.
I think that is a fantastic point, and it's getting later into the sales process before someone raises their hand and asks for a demo or asks for a consultation. What's the sort of content that you suggest people think through it in a little bit differently when it comes to approaching a team like this?
I think there's not a simple answer to what is a great question around what type of content. The reason I say that is that, there's a few factors to look at here. Number one is there's so many different personas involved today. You don't have two IT directors that look the same. You don't have two procurement directors that look the same. Different backgrounds, different views on technology. One will be consuming a lot more on social media. Someone else might still be printing out documents to read on the train on the way home. So there's not one type of content that fits everyone. I think what we try and work really hard with people today is to understand, based on lots and lots of content consumption patterns, what are the key pieces of content that are consumed throughout a buying cycle by different personas, and let's work out those top 3s, top 5s, and work to get those in your kit bag first. And then if you have more resource, we can build on that, and we will constantly measure those journeys to see if there are potential gaps.
Absolutely. And one of the questions that I have is, you guys have obviously had a ton of success with your clients, and a lot of that's going to be personalization for these sorts of questions. So I understand that. What are some of the common things that you see that buying teams are maybe doing a little bit differently as far as where someone goes for consuming that content that's maybe different than what it was maybe 5 to 10 years ago?
Well, one of the great answers I've got for you is podcasts.
Fantastic.
I've been a podcast junkie for a while now. Obviously, you are too. But we've seen a rise in the number of senior professionals that are consuming podcasts, and especially business-related podcasts. And we've seen stats and research behind that to show that the advertising in it, or the products and solutions and tactics that are mentioned on podcasts, are actually making a difference to people. I think when we look beyond podcasts, then there is the whole power of social media that just isn't going away at all. We're seeing people using, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest, and not just LinkedIn as part of that social process. It depends where they find their peers are, what platform they're most comfortable in consuming content, and also who then is building trust within those platforms. Because when we're talking about the micro influencers and the influencers today, not the large brands that people have the trust in that they follow anymore.
I think that's interesting, especially when you mention micro influencers, and it is all about that trust. And with trust at some all-time lows as far as in institutions, it is interesting that we go to these micro influencers for this sort of content. What's your take on that? How does a team actually approach a micro influencer and consume the content? Is it just one person on the team, or is it multiple people on the team are consuming different influencers, informing the entire purchasing decision?
I think that's the challenge. I think you're going to have multiple people on the team with different personas and different interests and different beliefs that mean they're going to follow different people on different platforms. So there's not that one answer for everything, and that's the challenge for the modern day marketer and the modern day salesperson, is to make sure we can be in as many of the relevant places with the relevant messages as possible.
How do you guys encourage people to go through that investigation process of, what's the buyer persona's preferred, like you said, values, media consumption, location of the media that they're consuming as far as what sort of sites they're on? What sort of process do you bring your clients through whenever they're evaluating just this massive amount of opportunity for them to create content?
Well, do you know what? I find one of the quickest wins that people aren't making the most of is talking to your sales team, finding out from your sales team who they've sold to recently, where the opportunities have come from, and actually spending a bit more time with those people, understanding where did they first hear about your solutions, who else was involved, what channels did they use, who do they trust, what information do they remember consuming, downloading, listening to, and really start from that, what we'd call first party data first, and dive into that. I think second to that, there's a lot of research in the market. And the reason I'm saying these things is we're not talking here about clients spending any money to start building these initial top level insights. This is about, speak to the people you already know and go and take the research that's available on the market as a starting point. Then we'll start taking clients on the process of building out that strategy, looking where there are the potential gaps in what they do today, understanding the true size of their market audience, understanding within their CRM how many of the potential buying group do they have and how big is that potential gap. And we can build on that process, but it really starts with just gathering some insights that aren't that hard to get hold of at the beginning.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the information you can find out from your frontline sales guys is amazing. And as you've walked clients through that process of gathering some of that, first party data and some of that initial research, what's one of the more creative or potentially off the wall insights that you might have seen from one of your clients here in the last couple of years?
It's a funny one. It's probably going back now a good 5 years, but we were working with a very, very well known cloud-based solution provider, and we were really trying to find out, the difference between the purchasing habits and especially where people go for content across key European markets. So we were trying to contrast what was happening in the UK market versus the Netherlands versus France versus Germany. And there was various themes that come out around trust and the use of cloud technologies overall and the platforms that people go to, local social media networks in Germany and France. However, one of the most surprising things that come out, and I think this is why I remember this, is the fact that one of the most trusted outlets that was highlighted for the UK market was print media. So we're talking the likes of, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, and things like that. So we ended up with 6 months later, the client ended up running, full page print advertising to sell a cloud-based solution that you can purchase online without ever speaking to someone.
Wow.
And it was fantastic to see we were doing that in print based on really understanding that potential audience.
I think that's a fantastic example, and I could see why you remember it. And, I love that because it's going against the conventional wisdom where social media is not always the answer. Podcast is not always the answer. It makes sense to learn the answer first and then invest resources. Kudos to you guys for that. That's amazing. As you were talking and just kind of bringing up the fact that you guys are an international agency, you have multiple locations throughout the world. I think that's more and more common. And I think even buying teams are obviously remote. What sort of challenges does that maybe bring to someone who's in a sales process, having to connect with people who are not even in the same office anymore together? Yeah,
it's great you brought that point up. One of the first things we've seen as a challenge is just the way teams are commissioned and targeted. You get this conflict where sales teams have set regions. And we have examples where we're getting people both sides of the pond responding to the similar campaign, probably part of the same buying group. But then there's a team of guys in North America with one set of commission, a team of guys in Europe with a different set of commissions. And they're almost getting in each other's way when it comes to them being able to sell to that enterprise and truly being able to collaborate. And that's the first challenge. The second thing is as well, and I don't want to start ranting today about technology, but sometimes the technology and the hierarchies and the data that's built into systems is not quite supportive of these processes as well. So we've got different instances of organizations set up within our Salesforce instances, for instance, and therefore we're not tracking that true buyer group because of those differences.
That's a fantastic point. The other importance that you mentioned here is, just follow up and nurturing relationships. How is it that you see this as uniquely suited for, approaching a team?
Well, I think it's vital at the end of the day because I think there's going to be certain members of the team and influencing group that aren't going to, be hand raisers in that traditional sense. They might not be going and filling in forms and we're capturing them as leads. However, once we start building those relationships with our primary contacts in those organizations, we can start to uncover the rest of that buying and influencer group and understand where they sit, what's controlled by head office, what is regional, where does compliance sit versus finance versus the tech department. I think that's a real key point. I think then when we move on to understand nurturing in more detail, I think a common mistake we saw happen, 5 odd years ago was the rise of marketing automation meant there was a process where everyone thought, well, we'll put the leads in the marketing machine now, and the ones that are most interested will bubble up once they start reading emails and landing on our pages.
Right.
And do you know what?
Magic. Yeah.
Do you know what? Everyone receives too many emails. They only open a small percentage of them. They only then get around to click on your links occasionally, and only a certain percentage of that interaction is being tracked. So we really do encourage people to analyze the data from their events, to do more, telephone-based work as well, not as a sales call, but as a customer service call. Keep in touch with people, try and speak to that expanded group, and start piecing all of those data points together to help your lead scoring process, and make sure that you are touching as much of that audience as possible. We want to get to the point where we're seeing that, that full buying team is in your Salesforce instance. Yes, they're getting the emails out of Marketo, but your sales guys are also communicating to more on LinkedIn, that they're sharing relevant content on Twitter that is related to that potential deal based on a recent case study around someone else as well. And then marketing are supporting that with some great later stage content. So there's lots more that we can all be doing.
I think that's a fascinating fact that as the rise of teams and into the buying decision process are becoming more prevalent, it's required to be more personalized and to get back onto the phone and to have more personalized content. So that is a fascinating, twist, and something that you wouldn't even necessarily think with traditional thinking. But as marketing teams and sales teams as well are approaching this, what would be an overall, 50,000 foot view encouragement that you would give to them as they're approaching these teams, and maybe how they can start tailoring their efforts more so?
Yeah, I think it's about just putting some time in at the start, a bit more analyzing of the data, understanding of the current relationships, the previous deals you've had, and spending that time up front to build that knowledge, and then build your content and your content distribution strategy around that. Don't jump 2 feet first into trusting a piece of technology, into booking what looks like a fab branding campaign, or just buying enough leads at the top of the funnel that you think is going to answer all the questions. It's understand that audience first, and then build your programs around that.
I think that's great advice, James. And this has been a great conversation. I love your perspective on how modern business teams can make purchasing decisions. If anybody wanted to connect with you or the team over at Kingpin Communications, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Great place to start is probably our website, kingpincomms.com. There's an insight page on there as well, where all of the great guys in the team here share their views and insights in terms of what's happening in the market. So if you just want to, consume some content, that's a great place to go. You'll see all that on Twitter and LinkedIn as well. If you want to find me, I'm mainly on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Twitter as well. James Gill, 1978.
Perfect. Well, James, thanks again for being on the show. We certainly appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for your time.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.